And so let's get right to it. We have joining us Lauren Victoria Burke. To my right, Politic365.com. To my left, we have Angela Rye, Principal and CEO of Impact Strategies. We have Hogan Gidley, Republican political strategist. We have Tyler Wall, also GOP strategist who works with the Republican National Committee. Also, Dr. Jason Johnson, Professor of Political Science at Hiram College in Ohio, here in the nation's capital. Let's tee the whole this thing up, folks. Blowout in Arkansas race there where incumbent Mark Pryor, he lost to Tom Cotton. Let's roll the graphic, please. I'm going straight down. So Mark Pryor wins, Mark Pryor loses in Arkansas. In Georgia, Michelle Nunn in her concession speech said they put Georgia in play. I couldn't tell with a 12-point loss. Please go to the next graphic, please. Georgia, Michelle Nunn loses to David Perdue, Republican there. Let's go to Louisiana. Mary Landrieu, the incumbent Democrat U.S. Senator, she's in a runoff with Bill Cassidy. In New Jersey, Cory Booker easily defeated Jeff Bell. He returns to the United States Senate. North Carolina, Hogan, he's buying everybody drinks. He scored a hole-in-one calling this race with the upset. Please roll to the next graphic, please. I need y'all to keep up with me right now. Tom Tillis, Speaker of the House, he beat Kay Hagan. Roll the North Carolina graphic, please. Tom Tillis beat incumbent Kay Hagan in North Carolina. In South Carolina, Tim Scott, he made history by winning his seat over Joyce Dickerson, the Democrat. He is the second Republican elected to the United States Senate since Reconstruction. Ed Brooke in Massachusetts was the first. Let's go to Oklahoma, where James Langford beat Connie Johnson. Connie Johnson, an African-American, lost in that race. And so, again, huge wins. Folks, come back to the panel right now. We saw in Virginia, Mark Warner squeaks by Ed Gillespie. There's going to actually be a recount as well. Real simple. I'll start with you. We'll go to the victors. Tar, you're smiling this morning. What the hell happened last night? Why did Republicans blow away Democrats in critical races?
Well, to kind of regurgitate a term used by the president, they got a shellacking for the most part. I think the biggest thing for Republicans was the turnout, getting those low propensity voters, the ground game that started early and was essentially a 50-state strategy. I think they've done a lot of things differently this time around. They got to those voters earlier and it made a difference. And I think they're seeing the results of that. I think early on, some of the, there was pontificating that, they wouldn't get the Senate. They only had a 25% chance. But I think that overall, that consistent outreach, that ongoing engagement day to day on the ground, building the team, I think certainly went a long way. And then, obviously, I think as we got closer to the election, it was clear that Republicans were going to take over the Senate.
Jason Johnson, if you look at the various issues that were talked about, Republicans did not spend lots of time on the Affordable Care Act. When you look at the exit polling data from various networks, voters wanted to discuss the economy. President Barack Obama actually talked a lot about the economic numbers, but somehow Democratic candidates did not do that.
Yeah, it's really amazing to me, Roland, when you look at this race. Gas prices are down, Wall Street is up, unemployment is down. You had Republicans in Republican red states voting to improve minimum wage, and Democrats still lost. So I think this is an election that really demonstrates a lot of just general disgust with Washington. My hat's off to the Republican Party, pouring out a little alcohol for people on the Democratic side, but I think we've still got a very unhappy electorate, and it's going to be the responsibility of the Republicans and Barack Obama to fix the general gridlock in Washington, D.C.
Hogan, Republicans would control the U.S. Senate. How did they expect to make the electorate happy? Because we've had we've sort of been in the situation for the last several years. The numbers are showing improvement, but I don't think people realize we're not going to have the economy we had 20 years ago.
Right. Look, it's been such an interesting night, right? I mean, I think it was a big victory for Republicans, obviously, but it's not necessarily a wholesale buy-in to what Republicans were selling. Right. It was an absolute disdain for the president and some of his policies. And that was a referendum on the president. It proved to be that because we saw a really substanceless campaign pretty much on both sides, right? Our argument was we're not Barack Obama, he's bad, and everyone turned out for it. Now listen, I think it was important what you mentioned because it's right. What the GOP lacked in turnout apparatus, voter ID apparatus in 08 and 12, they've obviously fixed some of those problems. However, Democrat strategists and consultants who spent the last 2 cycles crushing us didn't all of a sudden get stupid. They just didn't have anything to run on. So the president didn't go to these states because he wasn't popular there. They didn't talk about Obamacare because it wasn't popular there. I understand there are some cases where it's popular. I understand people now have health care in a lot of these states. I get it. But overall, Democrat strategists didn't go, we see the popularity and we're just going to back off. It was unpopular and they didn't want to touch it.
They had plenty to run on. They just didn't run on it. You can't have the president saying one thing and people running out in the field and the Democratic Party saying something opposite. The president was out touting his record, and nobody else was. Nobody joined him in that. He was alone. There was no united strategy, and that's why they lost.
I think that's exactly right. This is, I think, a case in point. I think a perfect example of what Republican strategists have been saying over the past 2 years, which is it's not anything but our message. And I would disagree with that normally and say, no, it's the policies. I think this is actually the classic example of it is our message or the lack of strategic message.
It's like the Democrats didn't even know each other. Pelosi, Steve Israel, the president, it's like they never even talked about strategy.
Well,
what strategy?
But part of it is there was fear, to your point, right? There's the fear that the president's numbers, he dropped significantly since 2012. He's been, you know, double digits lower than he was in terms of his approval rating.
But you can develop a strategy for that, and they didn't.
Hold tight one second. Hold tight 1 second. We got the rest of the hour to talk about this here. We're going to do that when we come back.